Welcome to Shutter and Flow. Today we are picking back up where we left off after our last episode, and we're just going to talk about some rapid fire things today as kind of relates to the business of photography. We're going to talk about some licensing, contract stuff, and some negotiation things.
Wait, but first, can we talk about how beautiful my light is right now? So I have a seamless up here and I bounced it in instead of making it hard. I'm just saying it's nice and silky. Bounce light's always better light. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, go ahead.
Looks amazing. You look great. So let's talk about licensing a little bit. This is something I think we might have touched on the last episode. So I have some thoughts on licensing, but I am not a shooter. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. I have heard a lot of old school photographers just rail on about their licensing copyright stuff. And I kind of feel like a newer generation of photographers are much less concerned with this.
Can we call
And
them
I
old
get
heads?
both sides. I understand both sides of it.
Yeah, it is definitely the model in the industry has changed. Um, in the back in the day, I remember in college, we talked about this, I think in the past, we had like that book of the business of photography. And it was like, if you're doing a billboard that is regional, you would get paid this much.
Yeah.
If you're doing international, it's like all these different things. And it's for 3 years and for whatever. Going from where we used to work, anytime a photographer, a freelance photographer was hired, great example, let's just say Conan O'Brien. He had a person that he enjoyed working with. We were shooting the big billboard key art for his new show when it came to TBS. That person is hired by the company and it is a full rights buyout. Almost 99% of the things that if you work for Turner Broadcasting, Warner Brothers, all these different things to shoot something that is very specific for a movie, for a show, they are going to buy out the rights of it. And it's just, you get a flat rate. You can negotiate to use it for promotional stuff, of course. That's always something you should be adding in there. But once you shoot it, you're getting paid for it up front, a larger sum, and not worrying about renegotiating 3 years down the line if they want to use that image again.
Yeah. And I think this happens more than just in entertainment. I mean, this kind of happens with a lot of bigger shoots. They want the rights to all of the images.
Yeah. I would say most of my shoots right now, because how agencies and companies are working, they just want to do it and be done with it. They would much rather pay more upfront and not hassle with it and not worry about, oh, well, 3 years down the line, can we use this image again? Because then it also puts it on the photographer or whoever, then you have to be paying attention. They could totally just use that image. Someone who wasn't there when you signed a 3-year licensing agreement comes in and sees an image and like, oh, we're going to put this in our ad for whatever, Delta, whatever it may be. Then that happens. Now, here's an exception. I have a friend that shoots celebrity portraits editorial. Editorial is where it's different. When you shoot for a magazine, they just want it for that one thing. They want it for the magazine cover. They want it for the spread inside. Then you get a lesser rate on those traditionally, but then you get the rights to those images. And if it's a big celebrity, if it's something you can sell to other people at that point. But those are also evergreen. They're not specific to a character in wardrobe or a campaign that is very specific for a company. It makes it where it is a portrait that can be used in other purposes. And I know people that do that and shoot a lot of portraits, celebrities specifically, that then you can see many other places. Think about when you check into a hotel in any city and they have their own local magazine, Austin, whatever, Atlanta, whatever, Chicago. They always have a celebrity of some sort on the cover normally. Most of the time, those images were shot for something else by a photographer, and then this magazine was doing a story and then paid to use those after. So that's the exception that I've seen. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and even with that, you still have to get clearance from the celebrity to reuse, resell that, right? Because just because you shoot images of a celebrity doesn't mean you own the rights to use those images for everything. So that can get a little complicated too. But yeah, I definitely think if you're in that line of work, absolutely try to hold on to the licensing because those images can be sold. Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the mindset of I think it makes sense to really care about and negotiate your licensing if you shoot in a world in whatever you're shooting that you can do that you can make more money with images that you've shot in the past. I don't think it's as important if you're shooting things that are not evergreen, if you are shooting things that are newer, right? So any product, a new product that's out on the market or something like that, um, images for a restaurant, those things you're not going to necessarily want to resell them potentially, right? Like you could potentially if you shoot restaurants, you could potentially shoot a bunch of restaurants and food, and if you own the rights to those images, you can then put them on stock photography websites or something like that. You may make some money out of it, but is it worth losing clients being like hard line negotiating around the licensing? And I think that's where I understand wanting to own the rights to as many images that you shoot as possible. But I think whatever you shoot, if you are in a position in which it would lose you clients by being very difficult in negotiating that, I think that's where I think it's just let them do a full buyout.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to worry about it ever again either. You make the money for that shoot, you go on to the next thing.
Yeah. And I mean, technically, depending on how you sign it, you are still the rights owner of it. If you do it the right way, you're just saying unlimited usage, full right. Sometimes it's a full rights buyout. Sometimes it's exclusive unlimited usage.
Yeah.
It really depends on some wording there of what it goes and the copyright and how that works. It can vary a lot, and that's something that you should have buttoned up on your end before you go into it and make sure that you have that locked in. But for me, it's more of a like, is my time spent better looking for these things where someone used my images after 3 years and going after them, and then, like you said, creating tension and all these different things? Or is it being a cooperative, helpful client that you're working together with, and then taking that same amount of time you would have been doing other the bullshit and working on finding new clients and being collaborative and like, yeah, we're going to do this together. Let's make some cool stuff. And it's like, that's my thought process on it.
Yeah. And so recently Adobe released a copyright tool. I have not played with it, but essentially what it does is you can now assign a copyright to the images, which gets embedded in the images, not in the metadata. So it's different than adding a copyright in metadata. If you are a photographer and you care about copywriting a lot, it's worth taking a look at and playing with it. Essentially what it's doing is it's embedding it into that image. And if anybody takes that image and uses it anywhere, you can actually kind of search for it in a way, or at least prove that it's your image, even if somebody strips a copyright out of the metadata. Or if you take a image that has metadata and then essentially build it into a different file type, that metadata will likely be lost. So it can kind of keep it on there somehow. But I know some photographers who hire services or work with services that go out and look for copyrighted images that are being used and try to get money. I'm not going to use the word extortion, but essentially they're looking for an image that's used anywhere and then trying to do like stop and desist kind of legal stuff and trying to get money out of images if they were used. And I do know some people that have actually made money doing this because they found a copywritten image that was used not under license, and they were able to get some amount of money out of it. I personally think if they had spent all of that time and effort and just did one more job for a client, they probably would make more money with less of a headache. And that's just the way I think of it. The world that we live in today is not the world we lived in 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there weren't as many social media platforms. There were not as many images just being used online. And so, of course, you didn't want to spend a lot of money, do a shoot, and then have those copywritten images that you did produce for a shoot being used by another editorial magazine or being used in an advertisement somewhere that went to print. But with digital now, I'm a little bit of the mindset that, yeah, if you shoot a lot and your work is good, your images are going to be stolen by other people. Now, if it's another photographer somewhere in the world stealing images and saying that this is their work, I can 100% understanding wanting to stop that. But if some small company steals an image and uses it on their social media, you might be better off just reaching out and say, hey, can you just credit me for this, as opposed to reaching out and saying you owe me money. And I think that's kind of my mindset. And I think this varies wildly in the industry.
And I think two things. One, I think if you take an image that can become a meme or people are into and things like that, and it's getting shared on social media, yes, it would be great if you got tagged every time. I can't tell you the number of images that I have shot that have gone out in the world everywhere that I'm not tagged in. And it's like, you know what? Especially with my old job, it was my job to document and do things. And I did some stuff that was very much out in the world, and it had my name was not on it anywhere. The people who did it and put it out there knew it. And I think that's what matters. But what you were saying about if you see your image from a small company, shares it on whatever, great. Send them a message, be very friendly, and be like, hey, I noticed you used one of my images. I'm glad you like my work. If you don't mind tagging me, I would appreciate that. And guess what? If you like my work, I would love to work with you guys too. Let's find some other, turn it into a positive, and don't go in there with that's mine. You have to take it down. Go into it with hey, let's work together and make some stuff because I like what you guys are doing too. Unless you hate their work, and then just tell them to take it down.
Yeah. So one last thing on copyrights, and then I think we can move on to the next topic. But I've seen photographers, you know who I'm talking about, who will post a copyright within the text on a social media platform. And you can upload an image to a social media platform and then underneath it say copyright this year, my name. I'm not sure legally that works. I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure if you upload something to a social media platform, the platform's usage rights probably negate that copyright. It's probably somewhere in that giant long list of rules that nobody reads when they sign up for a social media platform. So fair warning, if you think that just adding copyright somewhere is going to stop people from using the image, they probably won't. And if it's on your website and you have copyrights all over your website and watermarks all over everything, here's the thing. That's a huge turnoff for people to go anywhere and just see watermarks and copyrights all over everything. Go to some of the best photographers, commercial photographers in the country or in the world. Look at their websites. Do you see watermarks on their images? Do you see copyrights anywhere other than at the very bottom of the website? You won't. And so that's just my food for thought. If you're overly aggressive with putting copyrights and watermarks on everything, maybe don't.
It reminds me, I'm going to date myself here, but the movie Tommy Boy, where he talks about the brake pads being guaranteed.
Yeah,
And
still a
he's like, I
classic.
can take a shit in this box and write guaranteed on the side of it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's like not
Yeah.
going to actually keep you of anything. I feel like every 6 months when Instagram or whoever else social media changes their whatever, I see a whole slew of photographers that do a whole post about like, my images are blah blah blah, these are mine and you can't take them, and like a whole disclaimer
Yeah.
thing that it somehow goes viral that that's how you keep your copyright. We're in a different world, like you said, back in the day, to keep your copyright, but also those images were shot on film and it was a different thing. Once you shoot something and put it out in the world, it's not, there's a certain give and take of what happens to it, unfortunately. And that's just what we
Yeah.
have to live with the current day.
Yeah.
Like, we won't even get into putting it into an AI model and the latest Sora 2 and all the
No.
we'll do a whole other thing about that, about opting out of stuff, and if you want your likeness, and it gets in so
Yeah.
deep now. SAG, I was just listening to a thing about SAG is not suing yet, but like figuring out how to make sure that the actor's likeness isn't done, and it's a whole
Right, because
nightmare.
if some large language model is doing data scraping on the internet, which they can and they do, all of those images that it finds, there's no way of knowing what the back end is for what they're finding. And so, yeah, take an actor like Denzel Washington, right? Um, you could very easily today build an ad and use his likeness, and it could look pretty close. There might be some telltale signs, but only if you know what to look for. But for most people who are not photographers or not discerning in what they're looking at, take my mom, for instance. If she saw an advertisement that was built by AI, she would just 100% assume it was real. And
Sure.
so this is going to be a big problem going forward, especially for things like this. And if you're a photographer with a really unique style and somebody says, build me images that look like this in this style, yeah, that could be a problem in the future. But also, if you kind of think about it from another perspective, what's to just stop another photographer from stealing your style or shooting exactly what you shot and copying that? Not much, right? So whether it's done by AI or another person, it allows people who are not photographers to build things that previously only photographers would be able to go out and shoot, or other creatives could do. So yeah, we'll probably have another AI conversation at some point. It's like a constant topic I'm
Well, because it
interested
keeps
in.
changing. Like the new
Yeah.
Sora, it's drastically different. And their way they're getting around it right now is saying it is only for learning and not for like advertising output. So if they
Yeah.
say that, they can actually use
Yeah, that's
anything
like
they
a
want.
gambling website that's
Yeah.
like, this is for fun, right?
Exactly. Just give us your money and
Yeah.
it's for fun. Like it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, they're chips, it's not money. Yeah. Well, let's talk contracts for a few minutes. I have almost no experience with photography contracts, except for some stuff way back in the day. So talk to me a little bit about what the usual process is in terms of signing a contract before you go on a shoot.
All right. Well, this is great. I actually just did one on Friday. Tabletop studio shoot, handheld model or hand models holding tablets, devices, things like that for the local newspaper here, which is going all digital in January. So this is their marketing campaign. And yeah, they tell us what they want. We build out a quote, do all of that, send it over to them, their team, and it goes to a bigger corporation that they're owned by and all of that. So the contract tends to, in that scenario, come from them on that end. So they take what we do, the marketing team chimes in with anything, and it just basically, on this scenario, like we talked about just previously, these are exclusively their images to use whatever they want them in any format they want them forever. Fine. Look, this is a case where could I use these for something else? Yeah, I probably could, but I'm not going to. Let's just be honest. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend
Yeah.
the time to do it, and I'm fine with
Yeah.
that.
I mean, that's the other thing, right? If you're busy, you're just not. So let me ask you a couple kind of follow-up questions then. How long are the contracts typically? Like how many pages are we talking for a typical contract that you get from clients, or do they just vary wildly?
They're normally shorter than you would imagine when you imagine a contract. It is like this one was the entire estimate breakdown and the pay for each thing. It had my rate, assistance, digital text, down to this one was, we labeled it out pretty specific down to hard drives. We had a ton of props to buy. We paid for the models and we had negotiated that contract. And then they paid for the studio, which I found a great new studio here in Atlanta, by the way. I will post about that later. And then, so it's all of that. Then it's the usage rights, all of that delivery. And then because this was from a major corporation, media company, it has their standard legal documents,
Yeah.
like a page of that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it was
That's pretty
2,
thin.
maybe
Yeah.
3 pages tops. And that's just all of their standard corporate legal jargon that they have to put on every contract.
Yeah.
Um,
So pretty typical. Do you have clients in which you're the one drafting the contract that gets signed between you? Or is it 90% of the time coming from the client?
I
After
would
the
say it's
quote?
90% coming from the client. I can be bad about it, honestly, if it's something people that I have an association with, friends with, that I'm helping out with something. I tend to think the best of people, and I probably shouldn't
Yeah.
always do this, but I tend to go into it with the mindset of we're not trying to hurt each other. We're not trying to do anything wrong. But I have a couple standard, not exciting contracts that I can use,
Mm-hmm.
which brings to another point. Don't use AI for your contracts.
Yeah. Well, you
Uh,
can, but you just have to read over them or have a lawyer
I
read
mean,
over them.
your sister's a lawyer, so you
Yeah.
know it's like some of these contracts, if you use AI, they could be garbage and they could do nothing. So it's like not worth
Yeah. Yeah.
having
Yeah.
someone look over. It's important.
Yeah. No, I mean, even if you're using a contract that if you need contracts, you're probably your best source are going to be other photographers um, who've been using them, somebody that's been around for a while, somebody that has a lawyer or works with a lawyer, then at least you can probably take that contract, reword some things a little bit, and at least some of the legalese that's in there will protect you somewhat. So I think that once the contract is actually signed, are you adding in any legal language into your invoicing?
On a lot of these, the contract serves as signing for the invoice also.
Yeah.
Um, Most of the time it is, here's the rate, here's what it's going to be. And then unless something drastic happens of like a change of whatever, if they decide to add another model or if they decide to do this, that's pretty much what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So you sometimes, like on the last one, it's not even a separate invoice. It is, here's the sign the thing. We click approve. Once the shoot's done, the client approves it, and then it just goes through their system.
Great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. That's
Which
fantastic.
that is something that is tough as a freelancer, is every company does it different.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. So, tracking your contracts, invoicing, having a system for all that is great. And just being organized, really, probably. Let's talk a little bit just as the last topic, because it kind of relates to this as well, which is a bit of negotiation. So, at what point are you typically starting negotiating in terms of prices? Because there's a difference between throwing out a quote and actually negotiating. Because when you're asked to throw out a quote, that kind of is the start of the negotiation, but it kind of, you have a little bit more leverage once they've decided to go with you.
Yeah. But I also think that my experience is the bigger the client, the more you can at the beginning, if you're already talking to them and you're building a quote out, talk to them and say, hey, what budget are you what's your budget you're working with here? And I've learned that when you're dealing with an agency or directly with a bigger client, their marketing team has a number that they're
Yeah.
trying to stay within already. So it's more about finding out what that is, putting it out there. And I like to sometimes give some options. Like, look, if you want this, this will make your life easier. It'll be a little bit more. Say, sometimes it's adding a digital text. Sometimes it's doing an extra assistant, a PA, like all these little things. I try to make sure that my number stays pretty much the same. And then there's a day rate, and then there's a usage rights kind of buyout number. And you can combine those together. I've done it different ways where that's like one big number or two separate numbers. It varies of what people want to see in that. And then you're just having that conversation honestly with them, like, all right, if you need 2 days of shooting, that's going to double that. And I think right away you try to start it in a friendly, collaborative way of seeing what they have to work with and make sure that you're matching that without underselling yourself.
Yeah, because a better way to handle it sometimes, if they don't have a big budget as well, is saying, here's what we can do within that budget. Like you can be a problem solver. You can say, here's what we can do to fix that, or here's what we can do to help you within your budget, or here's what I can do on my end, without actually taking away from your day rate, right? Your day rate is the thing that you want to kind of be the North Star. And then other parts of the shoot, you can try and help and see if there's ways you can cut down on.
Yeah. And I think also you have to be flexible for yourself. And for instance, the shoot last week that I did, I had a good friend of ours who is very talented at many other things. And he was laid off of his job at Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. I brought him in to assist me, air quote. But also, I'm like, he's so creative and talented. I'm going to give him more money than what the assistant rate was because I can trust him to do more.
Yeah.
And really put the extra effort in. Yes, I'll take that extra money out of my percentage. I'm not adding that into the client because I've already done the contract and done all the stuff. But that's on me to make my life easier and to make my day more enjoyable because we just had a good time all working together on set. Same thing like when you and I work on together on set. It's like, yeah, I will pay extra because we're having a good time and we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, which is always worth more, really, if you think about it.
Like I what was I just listening to? Some TV person, and he has the no assholes rule, and it's just like, yeah, just work with fun people and no assholes, and we'll have a good time and enjoy set and not feel stressed about it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I think that's a good place to wrap it up today. No assholes.
no
Everybody be
assholes.
nice. Everybody love everybody.
Well, let's
All
just
right.
say it just in case if for some reason I'm leaving in a few hours for a family trip to New Zealand for 2 weeks. We are hopefully going to be ahead of schedule. If for some reason there's a week off, I promise I'll send pretty pictures from New Zealand.
Yeah.
And there may be a new drone in my future. I'm just saying it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. We might be off for a week and then we'll pick back up, but maybe not. Well, thanks everybody. And I think next time we will actually be talking about some really technical things, digital workflows, file storage, exciting things like that. But we think it's probably important to cover some of it.
Yep. Talk to you soon.